Welcome back to the Enlightened Life podcast. I'm so excited you're here with us. My guest today says he was a bad student. In his words, he could be a teacher's best friend or worst enemy, swinging between charismatic participant and equally charismatic dissident. And so it's not surprising that for the past 2 decades, he's devoted his life to helping others forge a path to success that fits them. He founded an education company centered around individualized growth. He's coached teachers and business professionals and authored the incredible book, The Power of Personality. His mission? To help people understand that our relationships with others are only as healthy as our relationships with ourselves. So sit back and relax and get ready for a conversation that just might change the way you see yourself and the world around you. Please welcome to the show, Eric G. Hey,
Thank you for
Eric,
having
how
me,
are you?
Scott. Thank you for
No,
having
it's a
me.
pleasure.
I'm excited to be here.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So tell me, I mean, you've done so well for yourself, but you say you were a bad student. How did that early experience shape the way you approach education and success today?
Yeah, I think when we go to school, and it's a good thing. I think we're like trained like this is important. This is like the most important thing in your
Right.
life, and you can't mess it up. And you have that mindset, but then at least for me, like going through the different grade levels, I started realizing, like this is doesn't feel right sometimes to me. Like I'm not particularly fond of doing my homework all the time, and
Right.
even though that sounds, I mean, you say that to anybody and they're like, oh my gosh, you can't say that to kids. And it's like, well, like everybody, like teachers don't like doing their classwork. They don't like correcting their classwork. So that's something you realize afterwards, right? After the fact. But as a student, as like a 6, 7, 8-year-old, 9-year-old kid,
Yes.
it takes a while to kind of break through that mold. And I think that really helped me to understand, like, yeah, there's different ways that we can all grow. And school in and of itself is a construct, right? So there's different schooling that we can get and actually give to kids based on their different needs.
Well, and who really does like homework? I mean, let's be
Yeah,
honest. I
yeah,
didn't
right,
like it.
right,
I
right.
have a son. He's in sixth grade, and he hates homework. And it's not about not understanding it, or it's just I worked all day. Do I really have to
Yeah,
do this now? And he can zip through it. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, I work all day, and I don't necessarily want to do it all night either. So there you go.
right.
What do you think is
Yeah.
the biggest? Yeah, go ahead. Were you going to say something? I
Oh,
didn't want to interrupt you.
no, I was just gonna say my favorite one of my favorite quotes of all time is from Nietzsche, and he says, "True maturity consists in regaining the seriousness one had as a child at play." And I think that's so true.
Yes.
Like we think school is so serious, but it's like, what we find as adults is the things that really we had a passion for as children and are really enjoyable to us now are probably the things that are going to be the most likely to lead to our success. So,
Yeah, it's true. And it will have already come out by then, but there is an episode that's actually coming out next week, which will be out long before this episode comes out. But it's really about how you measure success, and it's not always in the money or
mhm.
the job or how busy you are. It's there's so many different ways to measure success. I think that's great.
Yeah, we all end
What
up in the same place anyway, right? Like when they say the
eventually,
after the game of chess is over, the king and the pawn go back into the same box. And so, it's just really how
absolutely.
we play the game.
Absolutely. So, what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have,
With education
with
specifically.
traditional schooling? With traditional schooling,
Oh, I would probably say that with kids, it's the assumption that this is education has always been there. It's always been this way, and whatever they're
yeah,
told from their teachers is absolute. And I think that's probably the biggest misconception. And then, in reverse, like I think parents automatically are like, oh, well, I put my kid in this. This is like a surefire way for them to get where they need to go, and they all have to follow the rules. Otherwise, I'm failing as a parent. And I feel like that is all one big assumption. Public
right?
school wasn't around like 150 years ago. And it was really just a
Yeah,
way to get people in control, right? They didn't want, and this is going to sound terrible, but they didn't want the masses to be like the uneducated masses that might overthrow the elite. And so the elite were like, well, how are we going to like control this? Oh, let's like give them something to do. We're not going to allow them into our private schools. We're just going to have these public schools that they can kind of do stuff and not like misbehave. But of course, the coolest thing is like the power of the human spirit and the power of human intellect. Doesn't matter what kind of education you get, public or private or however. restricted it was back in the day, people overcome.
So, tell us a little bit about what you do, because I know your business is it sort of centers around that a little bit. What is it that your business actually does?
Yeah, I wrote it's based on the book, right? I developed my own personality typing methodology.
Hmm.
So I help. Okay, long story short, I actually started first as a writing coach. And what I found as
Oh,
a writer, because that was my background, I studied screenwriting, I wrote my entire life. And what I found out was, in terms of writing, it's not about grammar, it's not about sentence
yeah.
structure, it's not about any of that. It's about finding your voice, right? Like helping people find their voice. And what I
Hmm.
realized is you can't help people find their voice if they don't know who they are. And I had always studied personality theory. I'd used it in my education company. So I just started blending the two together.
Hmm.
And it just came to a point where I helped people figure out what personality type they are because based on your personality type, your growth arc is going to be determined by that. So that's pretty much what my
Interesting.
company does is I help people find out who they are so that they can know where they're going, or at least the best version or the road at which they're going to become the best version of themselves.
And what age are we looking at? When do you start
You
working
know,
with
you can
people?
I start as early as like 9 or 10.
Oh,
I've worked
okay.
with students that are really young, but my preference is usually 9 or 10. And generally, that's when I get them, specifically 10 or 11, actually, I should say, because
Yep.
I think any parent would know that's like the moment where their kid starts hating them and they stop listening to
Mm.
them. And they're just like, what happened to this cute little kid that used to like just want to get ice cream and stuff? So that's the age that I start come in and like, okay, I'm like the honest person who's gonna joke around but also get them to ideally find who they are. And because kids will talk about things that they might with me that they might not talk with their parents about, right? At that age, adolescence. But
Yeah,
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 that's the perfect
absolutely.
time. Mhm.
And so, what do you do with that information once you have that? How do they use the information? I guess I should say.
I had a student just the other day ask me, so I'm a dolphin. So my personality typing methodology uses animal types, right? It's very easy to
Okay.
remember. There's 16 of them, and you can find out about all about that in the book. But I had a student say she knows she's a dolphin now because I told her that after meeting her, there, talking with her, and I've been working with her for maybe a couple of years now. And she's around 12 now, and she's just she originally wanted to be a vet. But I realized at very early, I was like, oh, okay, I think someone, maybe your grandparents, maybe your parents told you, okay, like you should be a vet because you like dogs. You know, you like
Yeah.
dogs? Doctor. What's the doctor with animals? A vet, And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe that's not exactly what you want to do. And so she started asking me just the other day, like, what do dolphins, what should a dolphin want to do? I'm like, well, you can't really just go for a specific job, but think of the specific skills that you can work on as a 12-year-old. And then if you can just pursue those things, they're gonna lead to certain jobs. And I think for dolphins specifically, I was like, well, dolphins love working with people, they love leading people, but in a very safe space. So obviously that might
Sure.
lead towards counseling, education, maybe working, owning your own nonprofit, things of that nature. So yeah, your personality
Makes
type can
sense.
very lead to like different careers and different paths of life, I would say.
Do you have any suggestions for people who feel like they're stuck in a system that doesn't fit who they are? What should they do? Like, you realize you're there. What do I do now?
Ooh, that's a good question. And I have a couple clients who are in that spot. And I'm also a pragmatist. So I'm always like, well, don't just leave. I know unless you really have to, unless you feel like you're going to be so depressed that you can't handle it anymore. But generally, it's
Hmm.
more like people are feeling that slow burn, right? Where they're like, oh, I'm not feeling that great. Not terrible, but I'm feeling like a 3 or 4 in my job. Not a one, but
Hmm.
a 3 or 4. I'm like, okay, that's when you need to start planning for the future and just start thinking of a way out. I would definitely
Yep.
recommend finding what your personality type is because I think I've had a lot of clients who they're in their 40s, the mid 40s, mid 50s,
Yeah.
and they're just like, wow, I've never really had to think about this, and I probably should have, but now it's never too late to start. Find out what you
Yeah.
are because you find out your personality type, you can actually find out probably what you truly want out of life, and then that'll help you decide what's the next path, right? Like where
Where to
you go
go?
from. Yeah, exactly.
Do you find that it's easier to grab them as children? When I say easier, I mean, you get someone who's 50, let's use as an example,
Mhm.
who's sort of set in their ways. They have their family, they have their life experience. It's difficult to just leave a job that pays well when you have all these other responsibilities to pursue something that may or may not give you immediate gratification. But when you're catching them at, 10 years old, it's almost like you have all this time to sort of figure it out. Even if you don't really get the right answer at 10, maybe you'll get it by 20.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. It's so much better working with, at a young age, even though, once again, it's never too late. But,
Of
what's
course.
the Yoda statement? You have to unlearn what you've learned. And I think when we're adults, and that goes for me as well, we have all these assumptions in our mind that have been built up over these years of
Yeah.
experience, right? And that can be hard to break. So, of course, with kids, it's a little bit easier to do that. Even like I have like a 15-year-old student, and even then there are a lot of assumptions that I have to break because they've been built up, and not just it's not anyone's fault. It's just like the whole system, right? You go to school
Right.
and all your classmates want to do this thing and they're saying how important this is, so of course you think this is like the most important thing in the world. But at the end of the day, like you said, like even if you don't, like even if they don't change or grow at 10, 11, or 12, by the time they're 19 or 20, they're going to get it, or ideally get
Yeah.
it. One of my favorite quotes from Twain is when he says, my dad, when I was 12, like I had no use for the old man, but by the time I was turned 18, it was amazing how much he had learned in the last 6 years,
Yeah.
and obviously it's not the dad who's learning.
Yeah. And it is funny. You see that with kids. You see this, cuddly, affectionate, we want to be just like dad, and then they go through this whole period and they kind of come back around, hopefully. They come around and understand all that they learned and have gained from their experience, which I think is fantastic. You you personality typed over 50,000 people, which is a lot of people. Have you noticed any patterns that maybe surprised you about the human personality?
Yeah, I mean, my book is essentially like the whole pattern, like drawn out, right? In terms of like, how do you figure out what these different personality types are? And I think a lot of people don't love the idea of like categorizing, but my
Hmm.
feeling is like we all categorize, right? Like we're always like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that person's a type A, or that person's quiet and that person's introverted. And I'm just like, well, like everybody typecast, everybody does all those kinds of things, but I think my whole philosophy is maybe we can make that a little deeper, a little bit more
Hmm.
complex, and also a little more open to change, right? Like, because I think my whole point is like what I found, like, typing 50,000 people is our idea of people changes, right? And it's not like they themselves haven't changed. We've probably just learned, or I have just learned more about them, which is great. And so my idea for
Yeah.
the book is just to encourage people to be on that constant lifetime goal of just learning more about the people in their lives, especially the ones closest to us, right? And I think the
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
information we get, the more things change, where we're not assuming, oh, my kid's going to be exactly like me because I'm me. I think that's the one thing I really got a lot working with. A lot of those 50,000 people were parents and students, right? And,
Right.
my company worked with maybe 1,000 students a year. So that makes, 1,000 pairs of
Hmm.
parents a year. And we get to see the interaction. And a lot of those parents, of course, were like assuming that their kid was going to be exactly like them, which, obviously you have a son, it's probably not always like that. Percentages are it's not going to be that way. So we just got to like,
No.
understand it.
They are their own people. And, you realize that from a very young age. My son is more outgoing. He's more athletic. He's
Mm.
more, he's certainly a lot more social than I ever was at that age. In fact, he kind of drags me along with him, which, I don't love sitting at the birthday parties with the, 20 something year old moms. That's just kind of how it is. But, um, don't expect it. Don't expect that they'll be like you. I'm not like my parents, and I'm sure he won't be like me. But raise them to
Right.
be good people. That's all that matters.
Right. We
And I
all
would,
have parents. Yeah. Right. So,
yeah, yeah,
so
absolutely.
we know that we're not like most people are like, I'm nothing like my parents. It's like, well, yeah, if you're nothing like your parents, then why would you expect the kids to be like you? That seems.
Yeah, it's not realistic. I mean, it happens, but I would count on it. I would think too that understanding personality type, yes, it does help your career and your life path, but it's going to also be helpful with relationships and a sense of purpose for yourself, just in here and understanding who you are and how you relate to people and what you want out of life.
Right. I think Gardner in his like seven intelligences, well, I guess it's eight now, but like those are the two ones, interpersonal and intrapersonal, that are
Yeah.
like inter is like, yeah, understanding people around us, intra is understanding ourselves. And that's pretty
Hmm.
much what personality typing helps us do, is like it's understanding, okay, like, my mom or my dad is like this, and this is what they want, and these are their values, but this is my value. And obviously, if we have conflicting values, then clearly there's going to be conflict, right? And it's really just knowing that we can't change that. You can't change what someone values. And if you do that, then you're really trying to change them, and that's never going to be healthy, right? So like unless you're planning on giving them shock therapy, it's probably not going to take, and that's also not good.
No,
So
I wouldn't
with
want that
relationship,
either.
yeah. So yeah, it's all about and interpersonal intelligence. Understanding different personality types helps us just get along better with people and understand that you can't change them.
Can you share? I mean, obviously, you wouldn't do it anyway, but anonymity and no names or anything. But can you share what's one of the most powerful transformations you've witnessed?
Let me do a generalization, not because
Yeah.
I'm trying to hide names or anything, but actually, this is
Yeah.
probably I wouldn't say my ideal student, but the student I'm probably best with.
Hmm.
So, as everyone else, we have our limitations. There are some students that I'm probably not the best with. And, the nice thing about owning the education company for a decade is I had a lot of teachers. So we really placed teachers with specific kids that we found that they would work best with. And I'll do that for myself. I'm not going to be great with everyone. So my ideal student would probably be, so I'm going to be saying an animal type, and that's going to be like, people are like, what is that? But if you look at the book or you go on my
Hmm.
website, the panda personality type, and specifically, or I'm sorry, the grouping is what I call shaman types. And
Hmm.
within that pack of types, there are four personalities, and the panda is one of them, and that's probably my ideal student. And that what that is, it's someone who wants to find themselves, but has always felt like they don't belong, but they want to try to assimilate. And that can be a really dangerous thing, right? When you're in a situation where you feel less of yourself because everyone around you is telling you things that you are not, right? And but you want to
Mm,
be. And I
right.
think I've seen that transformation quite a bit where I've had students from age 10 all the way through in their mid 20s and they still keep in touch with me now in their early 30s where they're just like, "Hey, like I just want to let you know like all the things you taught me and that really meant something to me." And that's the best feeling because really what I was just teaching them is like there's nothing wrong with you. You're totally cool. You're totally fine being the way you are and just like go for it. But they specifically the panda type needs that constant reminder because they're constantly feeling like these pangs of self-doubt. And I think for me, my personality type is one that can understand them, but is a little bit more aggressive. And I'm just more like, no, no, do go for it, go for it, go for it. I think I work best with them, and I've been able to see that type really transform and gain confidence throughout their life.
Well, it's funny though that you say that because I can see it even in me as a person that, I'll be around people who I think, gee, maybe I should think that way, or maybe I should
Mhm.
feel that way, or do things that way instead of the way that I'm doing them. That sometimes is hard. I can imagine, being a child and feeling like that. You really have the peer pressure, whether it's intentional or not, to
Oh,
change who you are and how you think.
yeah, one of my students, she asked me the other day, she said, or she didn't ask me, she told me, I don't want to grow up. And I was like, I know exactly how you feel, and I know exactly what you mean by that. And I just told her, like, we all have to grow up, but you don't have to grow up in the way you probably think or have been told that you need to grow
Right.
up. It's a totally different mentality. And she's a shaman type as well. So I totally understand. And by the way, I'm going to guess, Scott, that you also are a shaman type. I'm going to guess a humpback whale would be my guess.
What
That
is
that
that? Tell
they
me about that.
humpback whales are soul searchers. I always say
Hmm.
like if you have the theoretical or hypothetical village, if our community or society is a village, the
Hmm.
humpback whale is like the soul of the village.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, so they really take things on themselves, kind of like what you said. Like they are a shaman type, and shamans in general are going to want to like they're always going to feel some self-doubt because they're always going to feel like, am I doing the right thing? Like, because these other people want this, and that doesn't seem like I
Always.
want to do right. And I'm like, but like you said, as comparing yourself to your son, humpback whales are a lot more reserved. They're more inward.
Yeah.
Like the archetype is like Luke Skywalker, Harry Potter, that
Oh,
Campbellian Joseph Campbell hero type, where like they bring
yeah, yeah,
things
yeah.
to themselves. And they tend to be very spiritual. I don't know if you like nature, but oftentimes humpback whales
Hmm.
also like commune with nature because that's the way that they find themselves.
I am very much one with anything that allows me to reflect inward, with,
Mm.
nature, I'm not into loud music. I'm
Mhm.
into, more refined, but just sitting out and being alone and with myself, whether it's on the deck or out, for a walk or something in the nature, that's where I'm most at peace.
Yeah, humpback whales are often like as students, they're the daydreamers. So they're the ones who like if you're in
Ah,
class and you just kind of they start zoning out. I've had a student zone out when they're in front of me, is one on one, and I'm
yeah,
like, "Are you like you're daydreaming right now, aren't you?" And they're like, "Oh, sorry." It's just like and it's not a bad thing. Like it's just because one thing sets them off, and I don't know if you have ever had that experience where you just hear something or hear a music or something sets you off, and you just kind of like almost meditate for like
right.
10 minutes off to the side, where people are like, "Where'd you
It's
go?"
true. It's true. Now, you don't teach them. I mean, they don't come to you for their schooling, right? They still go to their regular school, right?
Right. Yeah.
So how do you balance the need for structure with the need for flexibility, when they go back into the classroom?
That's a great question because
Excuse
that's
me.
always super difficult, right? Because I don't
Hmm.
want them to like. I'm not the type of person like everything you're doing there is terrible because it's not. I'm
No.
super honest though. I always tell them, hey, you're gonna have great teachers and you're gonna have bad teachers. I also had that, and I think it's important to be honest because when I'm honest with them, that means that when they get like a homework assignment, because sometimes they'll ask for help or they'll mention things, and if they get a homework assignment that I really think is helpful, I'll say it. And it's almost like, well, I think even if they don't like doing the homework assignment, they have to believe that it's important to them because I said it and I wouldn't lie. Because I've also said,
Right.
oh yeah, that's kind of just tedious work. So, you can put minimum effort into that, but I would put maximum effort into that. And sometimes I'll help them with their schoolwork and try to integrate that because often, depending on the personality type, some personality types really, really do want to do their schoolwork and are just like, no, this is what's important. I need to focus on this. I don't want to work on any of this holistic stuff. And those are the types
Yeah.
where I want to like kind of like get them from this and slowly move them towards the holistic stuff. I don't think you can kind of they're in a bubble and you can't pop the bubble, right? You got to expand it
Right.
slowly.
Right.
So
But they still have to do the work, right? So it's part
mhm.
of the school and they have to fit in with the structure and they have to follow the rules and they can't just get up and walk around and just daydream because that's where they're because they're a
Right.
humpback whale. The teacher's going to look at them like, sit your hump down on
Oh
the
yeah, of
seat,
course.
do what you need to do. So it's like trying to assimilate into that, but understanding who you are.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I had a friend who was talking to me about his son, and, he asked me some advice because, that's obviously what I do. And basically, his son is in sixth grade. So that's like 11 or 12. And he's like, yeah, he just stopped doing his work completely. Just stop. He's like, just completely for the last month, he has not done any work. And his son's really
Oh, wow.
smart. His son's really, really
Yeah.
smart. And it's just, if he's bored and he doesn't think it's important and it's beneath him, is how he feels. And I told him, well, you just got to tell your son looks at the world this way,
Hmm.
but in that way, he's also pragmatic. So, he's not going to sacrifice himself on principle. So that's what you got to do. Just tell him, hey, like, something my dad told me. He's like, hey, you know what? I agree with you completely. Your teacher is not as smart as you. Totally understand that. That's totally reasonable. But they're the person who's in charge of your grade. They're the ones who have control over you and the power over you. So until you get that leverage, then you just got to just make do with what you got. Just be pragmatic about it. And I think
True.
some people just
Good
think that way.
advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good advice. So what's the biggest mistake leaders make when managing a diverse team of personalities?
Oh, I think it's definitely thinking that the way their ideal, especially their ideal leader, is their style, right? Because I do think, and
Hmm.
it doesn't mean that they shouldn't lead that way. You got to lead it with your style, right? That's the way you are. That's okay. You got to be yourself, especially
Yeah,
in your
yeah.
leadership position. But also understand that not everybody is going to respond to that, and you might have to adjust your style in a way that works best with everyone if you want like the whole unit to work properly.
I almost feel like what you do could be really wonderful on a larger level, say within a school district, where the teachers get together and learn what you have to teach them so that they can better understand who they have in their classroom.
Yeah, it's funny with my teachers when I had my education company, the ones that took to it the quickest were the ones who actually had children. And a lot of teachers have children. So it's great because they were just like, oh, now I'm getting it. Because they're just like, no
Right.
wonder why I always say, no wonder
Yeah.
why I love all my kids equally, but this
Yep.
kid I really dislike sometimes. They really piss me off sometimes. And then this is my favorite, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
and they start realizing, oh, it's just because our personalities are similar, so we're on the same wavelength, we're communicating the same. And then this person, I'm just fight my son or daughter, I'm just fighting them the whole way, tooth and nail. Which is cool that you understand. You're like, oh, my son's totally different than me, and that's totally cool. Just the way you described him sounds a lot like a fox type. But that's just a total me thin slice there. But sounds a little bit like
Yeah.
a fox, you know?
Yeah, and he's a good kid. He's smart. He's just insanely outgoing. And, and he's got just for example, a few weeks ago, he had a party. It was a basketball end of season party, and he's excited all week. And I'm thinking, man, I hope it's rained out so I don't have to go. It's that kind of thing. The weekend comes around, I just want to be left alone, but it's just, it's just the way it is. It's just how it is. We all
Oh yeah.
manage.
Oh yeah, well,
And
foxes are natural networkers, so that's their strength.
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
him.
yeah, I got an uncle who's a fox, and he's like connects this person.
It's
They love
unreal.
that. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. I actually admire it in him, to be perfectly honest with you. It's just not who I am.
Oh.
Yeah. So I want to switch gears just a second because you've worn a lot of hats. You're a pianist, barbecue enthusiast,
Mhm.
fantasy football champion, mentor. How do you stay connected to all these different sides of yourself?
Because of my personality type, that one's actually easy, and it's not necessarily a
Really?
great thing. It's not necessarily a great thing because the weakness of I'm a baboon type, and
Hmm.
baboons we get super enthusiastic about stuff. We're shamans as well, and so our main goal as shamans, and that goes for humpback whales, baboons, pandas, and dolphins, is to discover ourselves, right? Like find out more about us, right? So baboons were the most like aggressive in terms of like, oh, I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna try this, in terms of finding ourselves. um, However, we don't always finish what we start. And so we can get really enthusiastic about something and not complete whatever the project is. And we can have like 20
Yeah.
different projects going on at one time. So I do knowing that has helped me because I need to be conscious of that. And I have to be like, okay, I need to finish some of the things that I start, knowing that that is a weakness of mine. But the actual starting is not a problem. But the finishing was somewhat of a problem, but I
Hmm.
got through it. I'm a pianist. I started really young, but I probably did not practice as much as I probably should have. So I always say, yeah, I played for 15 years, but I don't know. I probably practiced like a 20% of what I should have. So I probably would have been a lot better if I had actually been more
It's
committed.
always the way. It's always the way.
Yeah,
So do you
right.
feel that your creativity played any role in your journey of personal and professional growth?
Yeah, like obviously writing the book, it's a nonfiction book, but I wrote it in a way that it tries to be fun and engaging. And once again, I was a screenwriting major, so I kind of took that kind of like because I don't understand why things have to be, school teaches us that or tells us or tries to train us that only boring things are important. I think that's what kids get.
Right.
Now, I don't think that's what
Right.
teachers are explicitly saying and trying to do, but I do think that's what we interpret. Only boring, serious things are going to be important in our life, and the fun things are great, but they won't be important. And I totally don't understand that. So,
Yeah.
in terms of the creative aspect, for sure, like I've always tried to like even the way I try to talk about this particular subject because it can get kind of wonky is in a way that's ideally somewhat engaging and fun where I'm just like, why take it so seriously? Yeah, you're like Luke Skywalker or you're like Harry Potter, like that's fun. People like to hear that and they can connect with it and they can read. The person who's like Harry Potter or Luke Skywalker, it's probably watched Star Wars and has had some kind of connection with that
Yeah.
person. So it's a very easy connect, and I try to make it as fun as possible. And I think
Wonderful.
that is where the creative side comes in.
That's great. Can you talk about well, you had mentioned that our relationship with others is only as healthy as our relationship with ourselves. Can you just maybe just talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. I think in general, especially depending on the personality type you are, you tend to like see the outside as a big
Hmm.
influence, right? Like, this is what I should be like, right? But
Yeah.
really it's about finding yourself. And that's your relationship with yourself. And the stronger relationship you have with yourself, I always say find your anchor first. It's okay to
Hmm.
try different things, but you got to know who you are because if you don't know who you are, then you're constantly going to be like adjusting for every single person around you. And that's not even fair to them, right? Other people need to know who you truly are, right? So I think our relationship with other people are always improved when we have a stronger idea of who we are as a person because then we can communicate with them better. We're not feeling insecure. We can go, hey, this is
Yeah.
me and this is me, but I also appreciate what you are.
Yeah. Perfect. In your book, The Power of Personality, it represents decades of work. If readers could walk away with one lesson from that, what do you hope that would be?
I would say everything that you've learned so far in your life might not necessarily be true and best for you. and find out what's true
Yeah.
and best for you. That's
Beautiful.
the one lesson. Yeah.
On that note, if you could go back and talk to your younger, charismatic dissident self way back when, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say that wearing jeans like 10 sizes too big and sagging them is a terrible fashion statement. That's exactly what I'd say.
There
I grew up
you
in the
go. Yes.
90s. Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's exactly what I'd say.
Yeah, I think every era, I grew up in the 80s primarily, and
Mm.
they were wearing their sweatshirts inside out, and the hair was about 3 feet wide, and it was crazy.
Did you
Yeah,
ever wear like
lots of those
a thin tie, like a really thin tie, like
really
Elvis
thin tie.
Costello?
Yes, yes, yes. The thin tie, the parachute pants, the members
Mhm.
only jacket. Yeah, none of it was good. None of
You know,
it was good.
I still have a members only jacket that I will wear. It's my
You really?
father's. I had one as
Okay.
a child. I had one as a child. We had matching members only jackets, and I still have.
Wow.
Obviously, I inherited my dad's members only jackets. I still wear it just because obviously it makes me feel closer to him. And I also had one. Obviously not that size, but yeah, I still wear it
I
just for
moved
kicks.
about 4 years ago and threw out two of them. Right? Well, donated
Oh,
them
oh,
because I
okay.
was like, I'll never wear them. Well, first of all, I don't think I could because it probably would only button to about here, Yeah, those days are long gone, so that's not happening anymore. But yeah, it's so funny the things we used to have.
Oh
I
yeah.
wanted. Go ahead, Eric. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I was just gonna say I still have those size what are they, 38 jeans that I used to 38 Guess jeans that I used to
Yeah,
sag. So,
yeah,
you know, if I
crazy,
ever gain that
right?
much weight, yeah,
Oh,
crazy.
don't do that to yourself. Yeah, but you're right. You're right. I mean, it's funny. Everything had to be oversized and baggy.
Mhm.
Uh, I want to just try something fun with you. I just have a few little
Yeah.
questions. We'll do like a rapid fire thing, just so people can get to learn a little bit about you. Um, Early bird or night owl?
Night out. That's an easy one.
Favorite 80s or 90s TV show?
Ooh. Wow, oh God, I love TV. That's super hard. I'm gonna go. This is the first one that popped in my head. Small Wonder.
Small Wonder.
Small
Okay.
Wonder,
Yeah.
Vicky the robot.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. If you could master one new skill instantly, what would it be?
Juggling for sure. I got that one.
Really?
I do
Yeah,
not know to juggle. I'm terrible at it, but I would trade every skill I have if I could just juggle.
that's awesome.
Seems so cool.
Piano or fantasy football? Which one wins if you had to pick only one forever?
I would say the piano because I think that can give joy to other people as well.
Sure
Whereas fantasy
can.
football is only giving it to myself if I win.
True, true, true. If you win, that's
If I
right.
win, right?
And lastly, best piece of advice you've ever received.
Ooh, I got that one. So my dad, when I was sagging my jeans and wearing those size
Yeah,
38s, I was a bit of a poser. And my dad finally, well, he actually would say this when I was 6 or 7 as well, but he finally just said, you know what? At the end of the day, nobody gives a shit. So you got to do what works for
yeah,
you, because you're not the main character in anyone else's story. You're only the main character in your story.
yeah.
You're just a side character in other people's, maybe a cameo in other people's story. So why worry about what they think? You just got to do what you feels right for you. That it took a while for that to really sink in. Because of
Sure.
course, when you're 14 or 15, you're like, "What are you talking about? You don't know anything. I'm being cool, and I'm just trying to
Right.
like not feel like garbage." But yeah,
That's what it
that's a great
is.
one. Hmm.
Yeah, good for you. Eric, is there anything you'd like to share with the listeners that we haven't talked about? This is your time to kind of,
Oh, just the only thing is a shameless plug of my book, The Power of Personality. You can get it
yes.
anywhere on Amazon, or if you want to give Jeff Bezos your money, or if you want to just go support your local bookstore, you can order it from there or bookshop.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. I hope you found as much inspiration and wisdom in this conversation as I did. And if you'd like to learn more about Eric and the incredible work he's doing to help people tap into their true potential, be sure to visit his website at www.projectutopia.com. Utopia is YOUTOPIA. Projectutopia.com. And there you'll find more about his programs, his book, The Power of Personality, and how you can work with him directly. And if you're interested in connecting with me, learning more about mediumship, upcoming events, or other inspiring guests we have lined up, you can visit my website at www.mediumscottallen.com. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. And remember, the path to your best life starts when you honor who you truly are. Until next time, stay inspired, stay curious, and keep living your best enlightened life. Have a good day, everybody.